this week's episode of Naruto Shippuden, Madara Uchiha finally unleashes the full power of the infinite Tsukuyomi, covering the entire ninja world in a blanket of dreams. This week's episode was incredibly ominous, and it also just happened to have some awesome animation, really great artwork, some surprisingly good action scenes, and we also got to see the return of Captain Yamato. This week's episode was really intense because the infinite Tsukuyomi is really creepy. Honestly, I didn't expect it to look as good as it did, but this week's episode really made it seem like one of the most ultimate jutsu of the entire series, because it actually starts with a moon turning red, looking like a Rinnegan Sharingan eye, and then suddenly it emits all of this white light across the entire ninja world, and if you get caught in it, your eyes will actually transform into a Rinnegan, and then suddenly Madara summons this giant massive tree which just goes all across the entire world. Think of it like the Tree of Might. And what it does is it actually has these tentacles and these branches which come out, wrap up people like mummified corpses, and puts them in their own personal dream world paradise. What is really interesting, though, is that Sasuke actually manages to save Sakura, Naruto, Kakashi, and that's because he has his Susanoo abilities. And it actually does make sense that his Susanoo is able to block the abilities of the infinite Tsukuyomi, because he's actually countering an eye technique with another eye technique, which of course is the Susanoo, which stems from the Sharingan and from the power of the Rinnegan. So they're going to be okay, and of course all the other Edo Tensei characters are going to be okay because they're dead. They cannot be affected by this at all. The other big reason to check out this week's episode is because we get to see the return of Captain Yamato. We have not seen this guy in a long time, and he was actually the one who was encased in the swirly Zetsu suit, and he was fighting against a lot of ninja at the beginning of the episode using the giant Buddha statue, literally doing these like giant karate chops across the landscape. It looked really freaking awesome and devastating. It was only when he was finally released from the swirly Zetsu that he began to succumb to the infinite Tsukuyomi technique, and that's where most of this episode takes place, where we get to see what's going on in Yamato's personal dream world. And we get to see how the infinite Tsukuyomi is actually going to affect people, and honestly, the effects look nice, if anything, because it basically puts you in your own little personal paradise where your greatest dreams come true, and Captain Yamato just wants to be the leader. He wants to be recognized by all of his friends and teammates, and he wants to be the one who's looked up to. And this is all combined with this made-up action sequence where it looks like Kabuto has finally come back into town. He's been transformed into a snake form, and he actually ends up kidnapping Kakashi by swallowing him whole, and that's when Naruto, Sakura, and even Sasuke show up to actually fight against him. And is it just me, or did the action here look really awesome and just really creepy, especially with the look of Kabuto this week? There's this scene where he spits up Kakashi just like John Voight from Anaconda. I really wish Kakashi would have at least winked at them, but that would have been a little too cheesy. But it was a really nasty scene, and it also just showed that Yamato was going to go out of his way to help out his teammates, and even by the end of this dream sequence, Tsunade has actually made him the official leader of Team 7. He doesn't even start to question any of this stuff. At first, he's a little iffed out by it because he's seeing younger versions of himself. We're even seeing that younger girl by the name of Yukimi, who was seen in that one filler arc, and that was a really great way to incorporate some filler into the actual canon story. And it is interesting to note that a lot of this stuff in this week's episode was not seen in the actual manga version. Really, Yamato is just freed, he's caught by the infinite Tsukuyomi, and that's about it with a few short scenes. They actually expanded on it in this week's episode, and I thought that was a really good decision, because he doesn't really get to do too much throughout the end of the series, so this is kind of like the big final send-off for the character of Yamato. That, and of course, we get to see how everybody's going to be affected by the infinite Tsukuyomi. If you guys look at the preview for the next episode, it looks like it's going to focus solely on the character of Tenten and what's going on in her personal dream world, and I'm sure we're going to get to see some of the other characters. To my knowledge, I believe the episode after that is going to involve the character of Killer Bee. I really can't wait to see what they're going to do with that, especially if they continue to have good animation and artwork like this, because despite the fact that they are in a dream world and we're seeing action sequences which make no sense, they do still look really awesome. Like, I loved the action in this week's episode, and all of the expressions from Madara also looked really good. This was just a really nice-looking episode of Naruto Shippuden, and I really hope they're going to be able to keep that up as the series is going on. So what's the rundown on this week's episode of Naruto Shippuden Ominous? That's the best way to describe this week's episode, and a lot of that had to do with the entire atmosphere. The music, the animation was absolutely fantastic, and I really loved the scene right before Infinite Tsukuyomi was actually getting ready to be activated. They pan out, and you get to see this shot of Earth, and right above it you see the moon in the air, and you can see that that's actually in the forehead of Lady Kaguya. This is a very ominous premonition. We're just going to have to wait to see how this is going to unfold. But otherwise, you have a lot of great shots on Madara this week. There's this one where he was just activating it for the first time using his emergence forest techniques. He looked so freaking creepy and disturbing. I loved the look of him in this week's episode. Not to mention, there was this other really great sequence where he was using his meteorite techniques trying to crush the Shinobi Alliance, and Naruto used this multiple Rasengan technique, which took the form of these giant Rasen shurikens all around him, kind of like the planetary version that we've seen, and he throws them right at it, but that still isn't able to defeat all of them. It's really up to Sasuke, who ends up saving the day in this week's episode, especially with the use of his Susanoo. But really, this week's episode is all dedicated to the classic character of Yamato. It was really great to see him again, just to hear his voice. That and just all of the ominous, imagery that was in this week's episode. Seeing the world get taken over. The minute people wake up and look into the sky, their eyes change, and they lose themselves in this dream world. It's honestly really creepy. That and because of the soundtrack really made this one an episode to check out. It had some good action, it had some cool surprises, the return of Captain Yamato, and the beginning of what I'm going to call the Infinite Tsukuyomi arc. It's going to be really exciting, guys. Even though we got some filler episodes coming up, if they're as good as anything that I saw from the Yamato flashbacks, I'm actually really excited, especially because the preview for the next episode, just the look of Rock Lee and Guy, just the new haircuts and the fact that they're wearing shorts with their actual vest, just looks so goofy and funny because that's exactly what Tenten is trying to envision for these characters. She wants to see them as a little bit cooler, and if that's what she's actually viewing, then that's really freaking sad. I really can't wait to see all of the surprises, and if you're a big fan of that other alternate version of Hinata who's a little more feisty, you're also going to get to see the return of that version of the character next week. Otherwise, I loved this episode a lot. I can only recommend it to all Naruto fans. If you're watching the anime only, you gotta check this one out. It's incredibly crucial. And if you read the manga version, I highly implore you to check out this week's episode because it does have some new material. It's got great animation and artwork, and you might see something you like. So there it is, guys. I loved this episode of Naruto, actually. I thought it was really well paced and had some great surprises. So I'm gonna give it a 5 out of 5. This is the beginning of the Infinite Tsukuyomi, and we are getting this much closer to the conclusion of the Naruto Shippuden anime series. But before you guys leave, I want to hear from you guys. What did you think about this week's episode of Naruto Shippuden and the beginning of the Infinite Tsukuyomi? Did you like seeing the return of Captain Yamato? If you were caught in the Infinite Tsukuyomi, what would your perfect dream world be? And what do you want to see from the rest of the Naruto Shippuden anime series? Please tell me in the comment section below. Thank you guys for watching my review. Make sure to like it and share it with your friends, and make sure to subscribe to the channel. That way you can see all of our latest anime and manga reviews. You guys can also check out our weekly podcast show, The Powerful Nerdcast. You can find that on our YouTube page, but you can also download the show for free at iTunes and at RogueIntel.com. This amazingly badass podcast network where you can see a lot of really cool shows. Also, guys, I just want to formally announce yet again, coming this September, next week is going to be the 3rd annual Pokemon month. I'm going to do a whole month of Pokemon videos. I'm also going to start up a brand new Star Wars series, which is going to be leading up to The Force Awakens. We have a big Naruto movie review coming up, and a few more surprises, so make sure to stay tuned for that. Thank you guys again for watching, and as always, stay dandy, baby.